In 1975, an engineer inside Kodak invented the digital camera. It weighed about 8 pounds, captured black and white photos, and stored them on a cassette tape. The image quality was terrible, but the technology worked. The engineer proudly showed the prototype to Kodak executives. Their reaction was cautious. They understood what they were looking at, and that was the problem. At the time, Kodak controlled almost 90% of the film market in the United States. The company printed money every time someone took a photograph, and digital photography threatened to destroy that entire business. So Kodak made a decision that would eventually erase one of the most powerful companies in corporate history. Here's how that decision changed everything. The story of Kodak begins long before digital cameras. In 1888, an entrepreneur named George Eastman launched a simple idea: photography should be easy. Before Eastman, taking a photograph was complicated and expensive. Cameras were bulky, chemicals were messy, only professionals could manage the process. Eastman wanted to change that. His company introduced a camera that ordinary people could use. When the roll of film was finished, customers mailed the camera back to Kodak. The company developed the photos and returned the prints. Eastman's famous slogan captured the strategy perfectly: "You press the button, we do the rest." It was revolutionary, and it created an entirely new industry. Over the next century, Kodak became synonymous with photography. Family vacations, birthday parties, weddings, graduations, millions of memories were captured on Kodak film, and every photograph meant more film sales. But Kodak was not just selling cameras, it was selling an ecosystem. A customer bought the camera, then the film, then the processing, then the paper, then the prints. One memory created multiple streams of profit. That is what made Kodak so powerful. And that is also what made Kodak so vulnerable. Because once photography no longer needed film, the whole machine would start to break. By the 1970s, Kodak was a global giant. The company employed more than 100,000 people. Its film business was enormously profitable. In the United States, Kodak controlled roughly 90% of the film market. Worldwide, the company held a dominant position in consumer photography. Few corporations in history have ever dominated an industry so completely. Kodak was not just successful, it was embedded in culture. Its yellow boxes sat in drawers, kitchen cabinets, and camera shops all over the world. Its name became shorthand for a perfect moment, a Kodak moment. That is the kind of brand power most companies can only dream about. And it gave Kodak something dangerous: confidence. The kind of confidence that makes disruption look distant. The kind that makes powerful companies believe they have more time than they really do. Which is exactly why the next chapter is so surprising. Because the technology that would destroy Kodak was invented inside Kodak itself. In 1975, a young Kodak engineer named Sasson built the first digital camera prototype. The device used a charge-coupled device sensor, captured a tiny image, and stored the data electronically. It took about 23 seconds to record a single photo. The resolution was extremely low, just 0.01 megapixels, but the principle was revolutionary. Photos could exist without film. Sasson demonstrated the camera to Kodak executives. Their reaction was cautious. Executives recognized the potential, but they also saw the danger. Kodak's profits depended on film. Digital cameras required no film, no processing, no photo labs, no printing chemicals. In other words, digital photography threatened the entire Kodak business model. So leadership made a choice: develop the technology quietly, study it, patent it, but do not rush to replace film. Do not destroy the machine that was making billions. And that decision would echo for decades, because from that moment on, Kodak was trapped by its own success. Every step toward the future felt like an attack on the present. For years, Kodak continued to dominate photography. The company expanded globally, introduced new film products, and perfected the economics of the film industry. Every roll of film led to processing. Every photo print generated more revenue. Kodak wasn't just selling cameras, it was selling habits. Family habits, consumer habits, retail habits. The entire industry moved around Kodak, and executives feared that digital photography would destroy all of it. But outside Kodak, the world was changing. Technology companies were beginning to experiment with digital imaging. Sony introduced one of the first electronic cameras in 1981. Other manufacturers followed. At first, the technology seemed harmless. Image quality was poor, equipment was expensive, and consumers still preferred film. But digital sensors kept improving, computers became more powerful, and storage became cheaper. The gap between film and digital started closing, slowly at first, then faster. And because Kodak had spent so many years protecting film, it never built the same urgency its rivals had. That decision would change everything. By the 1990s, digital photography was no longer a curiosity. It was becoming a real market. Camera companies in Japan were investing heavily in digital research. Consumers were beginning to experiment with digital cameras, and photo sharing was slowly moving online. Kodak saw the trend. The company even released early digital products. It launched Photo CD, then consumer digital cameras. Later, it pushed its EasyShare line. From the outside, it looked like Kodak was adapting, but inside, the strategy remained conflicted. Leadership wanted to participate in digital photography without destroying the film business, which created a dangerous contradiction. Kodak tried to protect the past while cautiously exploring the future. That sounds reasonable, even smart, but in moments of technological disruption, half measures are often the most dangerous move of all, because they create the illusion of adaptation without the speed of real change. Meanwhile, competitors were moving much faster. Companies like Canon, Sony, Nikon, and Fujifilm focused aggressively on digital cameras, and they had one major advantage. They had no film empire to protect. They could chase the future without mourning the past. Kodak could not, and that difference would prove fatal. Then something even bigger happened. The internet arrived, and suddenly photography was no longer just about taking pictures, it was about storing them, sending them, uploading them, sharing them instantly. This changed the value of a photograph itself. For most of the 20th century, the final product was the printed image. You took a photo so you could hold it in your hand, put it in an album, frame it, mail it to a relative. But now, the photo was becoming digital first. A file, a message, a post, a social object. And Kodak never fully owned that shift. That may be one of the most painful missed opportunities in the whole story. Kodak understood images, it understood memories, it understood consumer photography better than almost anyone on Earth. But when photos became part of the internet, Kodak did not become the platform where those photos lived. Other companies did. Which leads to the biggest mistake of all. In the early 2000s, Kodak finally pushed harder into digital photography, but by then, the economics had changed. Film photography was extremely profitable. Digital cameras were not. Margins were lower, competition was brutal, and Kodak had already lost valuable time. The company invested billions in digital imaging, but those investments did not produce the kind of dominance Kodak once enjoyed. In fact, selling digital cameras often brought in far less profit than film ever had. Kodak was trying to replace a gold mine with a knife fight, and it got worse. As digital cameras improved, so did mobile phones. Eventually, millions of consumers no longer needed a separate camera at all. The market Kodak had been chasing was already starting to shrink, so the company tried another pivot: printing. Kodak hoped home printers and ink would create a new recurring revenue engine, something that felt a little like film. It was a familiar instinct: find a device, then profit from the supplies. But the world was moving in a different direction. People were printing fewer photos, not more. And now Kodak was once again trying to rebuild the past instead of inventing the next future. By 2012, the financial situation had become impossible. Kodak filed for bankruptcy protection. The company that once employed more than 100,000 people had been cut down dramatically. Factories closed, jobs disappeared, assets were sold, patents were auctioned. Its market value had collapsed from about $31 billion at its peak to less than $100 million around the time of bankruptcy. That is not just a decline, that is corporate evaporation. A company that once defined an industry had been hollowed out. And what makes the fall feel so tragic is that Kodak was never asleep. It did not ignore technology. It did not invent devices. It did not lack smart people. Kodak saw the future early, maybe earlier than almost anyone, but it could not bring itself to destroy the business that had made it powerful. And in the end, the market did that for them. So, what was the decision that changed everything? Kodak invented the future of photography, but its leaders chose to protect the profits of film instead of fully embracing the world beyond film. They tried to manage the transition slowly, carefully, safely, but disruption does not care about safe. By delaying the shift, Kodak gave competitors time to take the lead. By the time Kodak truly committed, the economics were worse, the market was crowded, and consumer behavior had already changed. The lesson is brutal. Sometimes your best product is the very thing holding you back. Kodak's tragedy was not that it failed to see the future. It was that it saw the future clearly and still hesitated. That's why Kodak remains one of the most important business warnings in history. Innovation is not enough. Seeing change is not enough. Even inventing the future is not enough. The companies that survive are the ones willing to destroy their own winning formula before someone else does it for them. What business story should we explore next? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to The Money Whisperer for more untold business stories.